A very good evening to all our viewers. Welcome to this week's edition of The Agenda. My name is Edward Mumbuu. Tonight on the show, we are discussing the problems in the affirmative repositioning movement. We have seen headlines in the past week. We've seen letters and other materials circulating in which it is very, very clear that the Job Ampanda-led movement is in trouble. And to discuss that with me tonight on the show is Dr. Ndumba Kamwanyah. He is a political analyst, as well as Edward Mumbuu, who is an investigative journalist. They are both here in their private capacities. Gentlemen, thank you for making time.
Thank you for having us.
Yes.
Thank you, Teo. Thank you for the invite.
Sure. We'll start with you, Eddie. You are the troublesome one here because you are the one who let the country know, sort of, for the first time, that indeed there's something brewing within AR. You've written a number of articles in New Era recently. What is happening according to what you have been able to find out?
Yeah, okay. Thank you for that. But the thing is, let me take you back to somewhere towards the end of last year. Towards the end of last year. Yeah. The AR movement held a press conference in the capital where they distanced themselves from the property group Save Namibia, which is a business concept by Dr Kamwanyah and Michael Amushelelo, of course. We all know that, where they are trying to build an estate on the outskirts of Windhoek in the Blackwater area. Where AR came out strongly saying, no, we are not part of this project, we are not this. So for me as a journalist, or for us in the media space, it raised a red flag that why would AR come out strongly to distance themselves from a project that looks legitimate? Yeah, so we started, of course, digging and all that. And one of the founding members of AR was at the forefront of that project. So it begs the question that why would AR distance themselves from a project that where Dr Ndumba, one of the foremost activists of the movement, is involved. That's one. The second thing, you would also realize that somewhere in the middle of this year, around May, April there, you started seeing Mr. Dr Kamwanyah, of course, being involved more in the political activities of the NEFF, following the announcement that Amushelelo and his business partner, Mr. Klute, had joined that political movement. I think he was also on your show. Yes. He could not tell you whether he was a member or not. Yes. So all these other things, it started showing that there are cracks within the AR movement, and information started surfacing that no, there was a proposed rotation for the seats in the Windhoek municipality, because some of the activists within the AR movement who are unemployed felt that no, this is we must benefit from these sitting allowances, at least make a living. Yeah, so I think it was received with mixed feelings within the AR itself. Yeah. So, and maybe to take you back at the Amushelelo, there was a meeting held by the AR, I'm told by some people, where they even had a heated debate to say, okay, because of the questionable character of the nature of some of these businesses linked to Michael Amushelelo, you know, the forex businesses and all these other things that are before the courts, they might perhaps maybe bring the name of the AR movement into disrepute. Yeah. That's perhaps why they had to distance themselves in the beginning. Yeah, so all these things, I think it just culminated into what we are seeing at this point in time. So I think I should leave it at that for now.
Sure. Now, Doctor, what do you make of this? Because you see, the affirmative repositioning movement is a very small movement comparatively. You know, in Swapo, for example, if there was a conflict of that nature, it's a big house. When the fire is on this side of the house, there was still much space to move to the other side of the house. In a tiny movement like this, it becomes a bit problematic to then maneuver. The space to maneuver is so small. What do you make of this conflict, especially from the implication point of view? What are the implications of that?
Yes, thank you very much. But perhaps let me extend a little bit
Please.
on the aspect of the AR distancing themselves from the property that was run by Ndumba and Amshelelo.
Yeah.
I think in principle, it is a good step that you have to separate between the movement and the individuals.
Yeah.
You know, what individuals do does not speak for the movement.
Yeah.
So there's that separations.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it was good that they have to pronounce themselves to make sure that they are not associated with that property, because Ndumba was doing it as an individual. I think that's what I'm thinking.
Yes.
Coming back to your question, I think first of all, let's remember that conflict in movements, organizations are inevitable.
Yes.
You know, you cannot avoid it. More in particular for a movement like the AR, which is new. So remember that people join a movement for a variety of reasons. You know, some joined it for personal interest, some join it because they believe in the ideology, and some join it because they want to join. So you will not avoid any conflict. What is important is how do you deal with that particular conflict when it emerges in an organization. So what we are seeing here playing out is the approach of how the movement is trying to resolve the issue. And in my opinion, it's a very destructive approach, and it has wider implications for the movement from now on into the future.
Yeah. It's good, Doctor, that you speak about the approach, because the you know, we've seen, Edward, how Job Mpanda has reacted to on Thursday to the letter that was circulating by Simon Amnime. He spoke about blended operatives, insinuating, he spoke about empty stomachs, as if to say that people were thinking with their stomachs rather than with their, with their brains. And I saw Paul Kathanga, one of the unhappy activists, also reacting to that a little bit. Do you think that the way, the choice of words, for example, that Job used will come back to haunt the movement? Because again, it's a very, very small movement, very radical, very impactful when they stand up on a particular issue, but they are small. And when and the leadership, the pool of leaders that it has, it's also a very tiny pool. And I thought Job Mpanda would say, for example, that, but we know Job Mpanda, he's not a guy who backs off. But when he doesn't back off, it doesn't mean that he's always correct in how in his approach, because sometimes backing off is also a good strategy, especially in a confrontational situation like this. I thought he would say, for example, that look, calm down. We urge our activists to calm down. We are in control. We are dealing with this matter. It's not a big issue or whatever. But to now come out and say, yeah, these are blended agents and stuff like that. I mean, what is the likely reaction of these activists to that?
Yeah. Okay. No, it's very interesting how Mr. Dr. Mpanda reacted to it, and other activists of the AR movement also, their reactions, whether on social media platforms such as WhatsApp, on platforms such as Facebook and others, and how other political parties, for example, are having a field day right now, just looking at AR's House on Fire and just enjoying it. Yeah, but it's a perfect crisis for them, and really how they come out of this, whether they emerge stronger or weaker, is really up to them. But I think they've started on a wrong footing. Yeah, because it's nobody is really rising above pettiness, if I may put it that way. They are all sort of at war with each other, and how should I put it? It's the war is within, so they are exploding from within, and it's really up to them to look at the situation, to sort of detach from the situation and have a third person's view and say, okay, what is the problem? How do we navigate? How do we come out stronger? And you mentioned the example of SWAPO. I mean, SWAPO has faced the biggest crisis so far that any political movement has faced in the country. But how they've reacted to it, the element of the fish rods thing, they've really managed that so well. Of course, it's a crisis. It has harmed them. You've seen how they've suffered at the polls, but their message is consistent. Whether you speak to the president of SWAPO, the SG, they tell you that no, those are individuals who used the name of SWAPO. That's it. Whether you like it or not, that's what SWAPO is telling you, and that's their message. So, and because I think maybe that comes with time, facing crisis after another, and all that maturity and all that. So I think maybe it's also time for the AR movement to take a leaf from SWAPO. There's nothing wrong with learning from how other people manage their crisis. Yeah, so I would leave it at that, yeah.
Yeah. Doctor, one of the things that sustain political formations is structures. That if one structure is not functioning, I mean, of course, AR doesn't identify as a political party per se, but it's a political formation. SWAPO has a Politburo, Central Committee, they have regional structures, they have youth wing, they have whatnot. So when one pillar is not holding, you can lean onto the other. AR doesn't seem to have clear structures and therefore pillars. Do you think that is also problematic in times like this?
Very problematic, and yeah. I think that is what is causing what is happening right now. I think all of us will probably agree that we really don't know AR structures. Yeah. You know, you hardly can differentiate what job says and what AR is saying. Mm. So that line seems to be blurred. Mm. And I think that's problematic because there has to be a clear separation in terms of what job is saying as a personal individual and what AR is saying as a collective movement for everybody that is part and parcel of that movement. Mm. Yes, clearly I think what we are seeing is that it is a test for AR, but also a test for the leadership of the movement, including Job himself as the chief activist. Yeah. It's a test for AI in the sense that we are seeing them that since they entered the city of Windhoek as councillors, that structure is dysfunctional. You know, they cannot hire a CEO. There's a lot of bickering. You know, they are doing the same things that they accused SWAPO party. You know, and I think this criticism is not just AR, but also other political formation that are in that municipality council. And we are. It is a test that they promise. You know, AR was founded on urban housing. They are part and parcel of the council. That agenda of urban housing, especially to the youth. You know, remember they registered a lot of young people so that they can be placed on the list to get housing. We don't talk about that.
Yeah.
You know, we don't talk about that. So I think just like what he said, that it will depend how they are going to emerge here, whether they will take it as a lesson to refocus the movement, or it is going to destroy them. And on the leadership aspect, I think they need to make the structure visible and the separations. Because sometimes people get confused when, let's say, Job Mpanda leaked something. You don't know whether it is Job or is it the movement. So those boundaries must be defined, because otherwise it's going to create problems for them.
Okay, so I just want to add one on what Doctor is saying.
Recently there was the AR held a press conference where they actually, I think they are moving towards what you are suggesting, having those formal structures. They announced that they are busy formalizing their structures, whether it's the finance department, whether it's what, just to sort of have those structures in place, so that it's not just any Pete and Paul can say anything and then it's attributed to the AR movement. I think that was the thing. But then the interesting part, especially on what transpired in Windhoek recently, where one of the AR councillors, or Ms. Keister, moved a motion of no confidence in the current management committee. It was interesting, the reaction by the AR spokesperson was no, they had not sanctioned that, and they would call them to order. Like he was saying, the AR movement would call Dr. Mpanda and Ms. Keister, there are two deployees at the Windhoek municipality, to order, because they can't move such a strong motion without the consultation or the blessing of the AR movement. But then it goes back to the question of the structures. Which AR structure are they going to answer to? That's the thing. Who is Job going to answer to? And when Amunime and Pau Pau Kafanga penned that letter that is now circulating, in what capacity did they pen that letter? So it's really just there. You don't really get to understand what it carries the letterhead of the AR. So is it a thing of whoever has a letterhead of AR can now just disseminate and say this is the movement's position? So I think it's also positive that they are moving in that direction, but I think they are raising behind time now, as far as the structures are concerned.
Before we go on a quick break, maybe just to you, Eddie, again, the bickering that is happening right now is bad. The choice of language, the lack of sophistication in the level of engagement is very bad. It's not professional. It's like very personal, very petty, not petty in the sense of the issues raised, but petty just in the choice of words and stuff like that. Do you see, what will be the end game of this? Are we going to see people resigning and saying, no, just stay with we are moving on with our lives? Or, because again, the lack of structure that we're speaking about here is a bit difficult, because normally you use structures to maybe recall, even Job himself, you recall him using a particular structure. But now without proper structures, clear demarcations of authority, I mean, what will be the end game?
Yeah. I'm not the prophet, but it's very difficult to predict. And I really think they have enough time to really get their house in order and really emerge stronger. But you used the correct terminology when you said the level of pettiness in the level of engagement is very bad, and it's very difficult to see, because when things are like that, you really need to have someone that says, okay, I'm rising above this, I'm taking responsibility. Even if I'm not wrong, I will just take the punch and swallow it, as bitter as it is, in the interest of the particular project that we are engaged in, or the particular movement or company, whatever the case may be. So I think that is really going to define that. So it's really it's a litmus test for them, and it's up to them how they really deal with this matter. And I think what will be what might lead to their downfall is for them to perhaps think this is just a light thing, it will just go overnight. They must step up to the occasion and deal with their crisis. Yeah.
We go for a quick break and return for second half.
In Business 7, you get news on current economic, financial, and business matters in Namibia. The weekly show features interviews with experts and in-depth analysis of burning issues in a way that caters for ordinary Namibians and business connoisseurs alike. We crunch the numbers that matter, decipher statistics that shape Namibian lives, discuss smart money, and explore the impact of global development locally. Money makes the world go round, so catch us on NTV, oneup2.com, and the Facebook platforms of the Namibian Sun, Republikane, Algemeine Zeitung, and Namibia Media Holdings. For news-related or advertising queries, please contact B7 at synergy.com.na.
Africa Good Morning is a current affairs program that brings you the latest from Southern Africa and beyond. News, economics, sport, weather, interviews, and so much more. For any advertising or news-related queries, contact AGM at synergy.com.na. Africa Good Morning, bringing Africa to you.
The conversation here on the agenda, Dr. Kamwanyah, what is, I'm sure for Job and Panda, the ideal way would be that others resign. But that they leave and then he's left, because also he will be left with a weaker constitution now, with members of the remaining members who will be slight, because these are guys who are sort of high level now in the organization. So if they leave, it gives him breathing space. So I think as a political scientist, he would want that they leave. But what if they don't leave? Because these guys, where do they go also? Even if they wanted now to leave, where do you go? Do you go to IPC? Do you go back to SWAPO, where you have said you have said so many things against the ruling party? You can't be accepted like a prodigal son there. What then? What will happen? Because you see, for me, my fear, doctor, is again, like I was saying earlier before the break, there's no decorum in this conversation. It's not people seeking solution for the movement. It's people seemingly seeking solutions for themselves, whether it's Dr. Mpanda himself or those who are against his leadership style. Nobody's really talking about the preservation of the movement. So what should happen here then? Should they leave? Should they stay and fight from within? Because we are saying, oh, you're a coward. This is what we've been calling people in SWAPO. The Hidipa Mtenyas, the Ignatius Shuamenis. If you have a problem with the party, why don't you try and rectify that problem from within? Why must you run away? So in this case, what is ideal?
I don't know what is the ideal situation, but what is obvious is that the movement is headed, if it's not already there, where COD was, RDP was. You remember when that conflict, the internal conflict started to emerge, and they lost their focus, which of course at that time they were focusing on SWAPO. So that's what we are seeing in the AR movement, that they are turning against each other. And for me, that what is noticeable is that this strife, internal strife, it's at the sort of, if we may call it, leadership level, because it seems like the individuals that are involved, they occupy a certain position within the movement. So there is sort of a power struggle there. So what is going to make it or lessen it is leadership itself. To make sure that the leadership, if they do have leadership, and more in particular chief activist, Job himself, that he should listen to the concerns, no matter whether it's directed at him. I think that's what leaders do. You listen and you help and steer the movement to make sure that the problem is addressed. You know, conflict, it's not bad. Really what is bad is how you address it. So when you listen to the language that they are using, both sides, it is a destructive language, and it's not a language of unity within the movement itself.
But that is, sorry to cut you short, Doctor, but that is exactly where if you're saying that someone must listen and sort of find a solution, in practical terms, what does that mean? What does that mean? Does it mean then heeding to the calls of rotations at the Siege of Windhoek, for example? Because that seems to be the key issue here. Is it now for Job Ampana to say, look, because I don't see what other way is there to resolve this matter, because the demands are very, very clear. Let's rotate this thing. And my fear with rotation is that it seems as if we are in for the dollar. It's about, we are not really at the Siege of Windhoek for housing issues, for service delivery. We are there for the dollar, because that is the message that will go out if you were now to agree to that proposition. But I also understand the predicament in which these activists find themselves. They said in the letter by Simon Amnime, he says that I have 3 qualifications, university degrees or whatever it is. But because of my association with the movement, I haven't been able to secure any job. I'm being rejected left, right, and center. And therefore, one of the ways to survive is to have a bite at the cake, that is the Siege of Windhoek. So will finding that solution mean Job and Keister stepping away and allowing others to come on board?
Well, I think I'm with you there. I don't think the approach of rotational leadership to the city of Windhoek is really good for the movement, because exactly as you said, it looks like a sort of jobs for comrades. I don't think that they should frame it in that way. It is a necessary debate that the movement can discuss, you know, at whatever platform that they have. But I think that the premises upon which it is based of saying that because Dr. Mpanda is earning, you know, as a senior lecturer at the University of Namibia, and the others are not working So we need to create that jobs for the others too. So I don't think that it should be based on the rotational itself. Maybe it's good, but it should not be based on employment. It does not argue well really as a progressive movement as they style themselves. So, and I sympathize with those unemployed people that are struggling not to find jobs, and they, you know, then you have a job having his university salary, but also getting an allowance from the city. But the problem is that it's not his fault. Who fronted him to be the, you know, the leader, to lead the movement, to participate in the election, and he became, you know, their candidate. So you cannot go back and say, because you are working now, you know, go back so that we can give other people chances. No, you know, because he did not go there by himself. I hope that it was a democratic process. That's why he was number one on the list. So you can't reverse that. But the debate itself, I think it's necessary that what the movement should do, and the leadership, is to create an enabling environment for the movement to discuss those uncomfortable issues. And they do have a point. And that is the dilemma that also Job finds himself. You know, he is an intellectual, a public intellectual, an academician. You know, he has a stable job, but he is leading young people that are unemployed. How do you balance? So he needs to find a formula, because they, you know, they will criticize him also for that. So there has to need to be a formula to balance that that aspect.
No, just to tie in with what Prof is
saying, Dr. Ndumba is saying, it's very interesting. And I'm more like caught between two places, especially from the field where I come from, the journalism field, where we have always been told about being passionate, being what, while actually being paid peanuts. That's a reality that Toyo is also alive to, especially most junior journalists entering the field, where you are just told to be passionate. So this, I also can relate with those activists who are saying, no, but they can't eat passion. At the end of the day, they have bills to pay, families to feed, and all these other things. And then on the other side, you also have an argument that says, but they are the ones who are criticizing the status quo, the government of the day, saying, no, the position of this kind of position is unnecessary, it's a burden to taxpayers, it must go, this is just job for comrades. How do you have a minister without portfolio? And those other things. So the question of rotation also should come with, it's a necessary one, because unlike Parliament, they don't have a list. It's up to, it's at the discretion of the movement or any political formation at the city to bring on whoever. So if they can handle it internally and say, no, based on competency, we think candidate A or B has not delivered. You go to the records and say, no, you've not, since joining the council, you've not tabled the motion, you've not done this and this, but we think candidate B, who is also an activist of our particular movement, has the capacity to deliver A, B, C, and D. So on that basis, we are rotating. But then to say, in as much as painful as it is, it's not an argument strong enough to say, on the basis that Edward is employed, he must be removed so that we bring in Toivo. I don't think that it sits well even with me as a Windhoek resident. To say, okay, so it's just because it's no longer about substance, it's about your employment status. It speaks to the same argument that is currently taking place about whether we want a female president or not. That argument, or whether we want, some people are pushing for a narrative that says the next police chief must be female. You see, so it's so on the basis of your sexuality, it must take you to State House or to the National Police Headquarters. Is that what? That's not, I don't think that's the level at which we must debate. It must be an argument of substance to say, no, we have studied, we have looked, we have reviewed your performance. We think you have failed to deliver on the mandate, like Professor Ndumba said it very, very well. Where is the debate on housing? What's happening to the formalization of the informal settlement? Land delivery and all these other things. So on that basis, then you can argue from that vantage point. But then to just say no, I don't think it's a sustainable argument.
So, Doctor, do you think that Joba Mpanda is increasingly becoming isolated politically? I mean, he was in SWAPO, he left SWAPO, formed AR movement with others. Now within AR they have that strife, and his generals are deserting him. In terms of alliances, they had in 2019 election, they sort of aligned with Dr. Panduleni Itula, of course, as an independent candidate at the time. Right now, Joba Mpanda and Panduleni Itula are not on talking terms. Who is he left with?
Well, it's a good question. So I don't know. There's not much that we really know about the operation and the inside of the AR, really to make a very informed judgment whether he is being isolated or is already isolated, because the culture of that movement, and it has been troubling me for some times, that it seems like to operate a little bit in a more hierarchical mindset. And that is a problem. Yeah. When you have a hierarchical mindset, listen to their language of chief activists, this and that. And there is also other political formation, chief patriot, and all those kind of things. That language in a progressive social movement that is fighting for social change is problematic, because that is the language that creates personality cults within an organization or a movement. That's why the movement is struggling to separate from job and the movement itself. I think that they have created a little bit of a culture where their politics revolve around certain individuals and certain personalities. And that is problematic. And I think that's what I'm saying, that the leadership must reign to make sure that an environment is created for everybody in the organization, whether you are chief activist, deputy chief activist, minor chief activist, or whatever, that are hierarchy, that they are listened to.
Okay. No, just to...
just to also just sort of answer Tewo's question on whether job is isolated or not. I think it's also very difficult to assess that isolation, because is it an issue of Dr. Mpanda versus Simon Amunime and Pau Kastanga? Is it the two against job, or is it the group within the AR that is after job? I think that's the question that needs to be answered.
Stop you there again, Edward. So the problem is actually big, because Simon Amunime and Pau of course, sort of the obvious forces of this antagonistic situation that is going on. But like you were referring to earlier, when I had Dimbulugeni Nauyama on the evening review, I specifically asked him to take me into his confidence and say, Yes, I'm still with AR. Yes, I'm still enjoying the same relationship with Joba Mpanda as fellow co-founder of this organization. He was non-committal to that. So the isolation, Job can afford to be isolated from Pau Pau and Simon. But if Ndumba Kamwanyah is also part of that, as it seems to be the case right now. The young man, George Kambala, he's nowhere in these conversations. He seems to have moved on with his life. So, and these are the key guys. George Kambala, Ndumba Kamwanyah, those two first and foremost were the key guys. And then, of course, you add now Pau Pau and Simon and others as a second layer of leadership, if you like, even in a structureless space.
Yeah.
But if you remove from the equation these people, who is Job left with? Briefly, before you're going to break.
You put it very well, and and then the other thing that I don't think that is enjoying, it's the allegations that they are making in those letters, the allegations of bribery and the allegations of maybe Dr. Mpanda being used to fight certain fights on behalf of certain individuals, third forces, to influence what happens or transpires at the city, including the appointment of the CEO. It's also, I think it's also coming out strongly in that letter, which leaves a lot of question marks, that perhaps Dr. Mpanda himself must also come out and also take the nation into confidence to say, no, I'm clean. I've not done A, B, C, and D. But then,
let's weigh in on the merits after the break. It's actually a good suggestion. We go for a break. We continue the conversation. So you were raising a very, very important point, Edward, before the break, and that is really the merits. There's, of course, the personality clashes and stuff like that, but what nobody is talking about, like you said, is the merits and demerits of the accusations that are being made. You were suggesting that Job comes out and address these allegations.
That's what I was saying, but it's like a they call it? A sword that has, two-edged sword. It's maybe Dr. Mpanda has nothing to answer to, and then it doesn't warrant him to come out publicly and say, take you into confidence, and then there's the person who's making the allegation also has the responsibility. You cannot tell me that if you don't stop A, B, C, and D, I will approach the ACC. Why are you not going to the ACC already? If you have a strong case to prove. That's really one problem we find with society, when people are only willing to approach these authorities as the final resort. So to say.
Extortion. People saying, there was a minister the other day, one of the ministers who was having a conflict with one of the CEOs under that minister's line ministry, and amidst this bickering, the minister said, if they continue to push me, I'm going to spill some beans. You are a public official serving at that level, and you are resorting to, it means that you are aware of maybe illegal or unethical issues, and you're not even addressing them. So it's almost extortion.
No, exactly, because it weakens their case, the two gentlemen that that penned that letter. You know, if you are a principled member and you have the movement at heart, and you observe certain irregularities that are happening, why waiting until you are in conflict with that particular person, then you say, I'm warning you, I'm going to spill the beans. Then it really also portray you negatively, you know, as a principal member of the movement, a movement that is advancing, at least what they say, progressive, you know, thinking and not censoring each other's. Why waiting until there is a conflict?
You become complicit actually in whatever, because that kind of silence in a wrong situation, you're becoming actually complicit in the, please.
I think at one point, some time back, AR was also in the process of starting their sort of anti-corruption arm on their own. So why wait if you have the evidence? Yeah, and then, but of course,
they spoke about, for example, the SMS campaign money that.
And of course, it speaks to the what is it? What is the word? The question of why am I?
Apanjara.
No, it speaks to the question. You know, the IPC-led MC, Management Committee of the city, is hell-bent that the process through which how the city handled the recruitment process of the CEO was flawed. And based on that, they want that process to restart. At the same time, there are other window councillors, including the former mayor, Dr. Mpanda, who is saying, or who is seen to be pushing an agenda that says the process must go ahead. And you also saw the current mayor is also against the re-advertisement of that position. But she is part of the current leadership in partnership with the IPC. She's the mayor, and the IPC controls the management committee. So they are in the. So she's part of the current coalition. So why is why is she against the appointment? Why are they not singing the same song as coalition partners? And all these other things. And then these allegations now that Dr. Mpanda, it sort of give credence to those who harbor such views. To say, no, perhaps maybe Dr. Mpanda is being used to fight some fights. One never knows what is true. So it's for all of them to take us into confidence. Those who have evidence must approach the ACC, and Dr. Mpanda, as somebody who's got nothing to hide, must also come out clean and say, no, guys, these are my bank records, or whatever the case may be.
Silence cannot be an option. We've seen what is happening in South Africa there. Ramaphosa just saying, no, I can't comment. There are processes going on. The man is not even formally charged. How do you say that the matter is sub judice when you're not being charged? So it's a very soft and cowardly tactic by politicians to hide behind, to be silent and not to account to people. Doctor, the affirmative repositioning movement was built on a very radical, but for me overly radical posture of insults, very humiliating confrontations. Their choice of language again has been bad, and I've posed this question a lot during platforms like this to the leaders and say, guys, why can't you speak like leaders? Why can't you speak with decorum? Why can't you speak with firm but fair in your choice of words? And their response has always been that we are not in the business of nurturing people's feelings. And we now seem to see the manifestation of that very language now brewing within the movement itself. Is it a situation of, because they do not know how to speak with respect and with sophistication. Making whatever point that they are making with this insult, you can make it as understandable 1,000 times better even than that, but just with better choices of words. So do you think, therefore, that there is any chance at all? Because you spoke earlier about, they can still, work out their differences, but you can see already that is the same language that is being used now in this confrontation. And as long as that is the language, I do not see how they will come out of this situation.
Yes, no, it's a fair question and a good one. And you are right that what we are seeing is a manifestation of a certain type of political culture within that movement that is more aggressive, confrontational, insults, instead of really logic, debating, and reasoning. And I think that is the problem that we have here in this country, especially with young people and the youth.
Yeah.
There is that misunderstanding or misconception when it comes to being a revolutionary or a radical, is that you must insult somebody, you must confront somebody. And I think that is not the really definition of what being radicalism and being a revolutionary. Revolutionary are people with great respect. They respect even their enemies. Are people that are very methodologically thoughtful, and they debate issues. They generate ideas. They interpret issues that are affecting the society. Insults and disrespect are not part of being radical or being revolutionary. And I have seen it. I'm not just talking about AR, but I have seen it and I have listened to young people. And I realize that this is a different kind of radicalism and revolutionary approach that we are seeing.
Indeed.
And it's problematic to me.
No, wonderful. The last throw of the dice, my man, it's with you. I want to ask you what your thoughts are on what now for Job Mpanda himself. Forget about AR for a minute. He has always been a very ambitious man, young man. A lot of people thinking that he might even challenge for the presidency in 2024 and stuff like that. The timing of this revolt, where does it leave him? Does it give him time? Elections are only in 2024, still 2 years to go. Do you think he can use the remaining time to sort of reform and refine himself, or is it game over?
Well, look, one interesting thing that is happening at the city, if my sources there are anything to go by, is the possibility of a coalition in Windhoek led by the ruling Swapper Party, AR, the Popular Democratic Movement, LPM and others joining in an attempt to isolate the IPC. That is what I'm hearing. It's an interesting and when you look at that, and it cannot be coincidental that just as this rumor is developing from some Swapo sources, some AR people and other parties, the AR councillor passes a vote of no confidence. Maybe it's a coincidence, but it shows that the wheels are in motion to dislodge the current coalition. It is an open secret now. The Windhoek mayor is on record saying they are struggling to have a consensus in the current coalition. It's difficult to agree on certain critical issues. That's what she says. So it tells you that. So if that coalition is to become a reality, where does it place Mpanda? Does he come back as Windhoek mayor? Does the AR take control of the MC? Whatever the dynamics may be. I just want to pack that one there. It's an interesting one, and we must follow it closely. On his career, I think Of course, many of these things have happened in the past, where the AR movement itself, their credibility and other things have been tested, and they have somehow found a way to maneuver and to really regain their focus and all that. Many things have been said about Dr. Mpanda himself and other things. So I think with age on his side and everything, it's something that he can navigate and perhaps continue on the same trajectory that he has been on for the past, I don't know, 10, 15 years or so. Yeah, so yeah. But time will tell how these things, yeah.
Gentlemen, it was a pleasure having both of you on the show tonight.
Thank you.
Wonderful. That is the agenda for this week. Thank you for watching.